This is the TriSwimCoach podcast, where the most difficult leg of the triathlon becomes your friend, leaving your struggles and your competition behind you. TriSwimCoach.com, helping you to laugh at the water.
All right, welcome back to TriSwimCoach. This is Kevin, and this is episode number 132. And today I have Chris Hague on the other line. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Kev.
How's things going?
Things are going well. Yeah, just, beating out winter, just kind of day in, day out, just counting down the days till spring.
Yeah. It's got to be tough to be up there, and when that temperature is like, what is it, the polar vortex that hit?
Oh, gosh. And we had 3 days consistently where we didn't get above 0 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh.
We didn't have it as bad as Chicago. But it was pretty darn bad.
Wow.
And it's just days like that you just hibernate in your training cave and do nothing but, train a road and VASA workouts. Because even like walking to the pool, actually they shut down the pool because they were afraid the pipes were going to freeze.
Yeah.
So, it's just doing what you can inside.
Yeah. Well, it's better than, I would say most people just sit in their cave and drink beer, right?
Yeah. And, here I am, sitting in my cave drinking amino acids. Similar.
Yeah, just swap one for the other. No big deal.
Yeah, I don't know how northern hemisphere people, or like northern hemisphere people, train for the Boston Marathon throughout the winter. Like having an April marathon as kind of the ultimate marathon to do kind of excludes the people who have to, train for it on a treadmill.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, no, it is. It's fascinating. Like the different conditions that you have to go through. And then April, sometimes in Boston, it can actually be hot.
Yeah.
And so it's like you could be training all season in snow and freezing temperatures. And then you get there and it's like 80 degrees and it's humid and it's like miserable.
But I guess that's all part of the challenge.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of challenges, so it's a good segue.
Excellent segue.
Yeah, so we are doing this podcast about ketones, and the reason, so I want to give the background here. We're going to get into all the different aspects of ketones and training and what it all means. And then Chris did a little experiment with some exogenous ketones. And we'll explain all about this, but I wanted to just start with the background, which is we were approached by a company called HVMN, which is human, and they get into a lot of different aspects of health and fitness and training. And then one of their products that they have is these exogenous ketones, which is just ketones that you take rather than have your body produce naturally. And they wanted us to kind of see if we were up for an experiment and seeing how ketones would affect training. So Chris is the natural person to do that with, since he's already training and is always up for these kind of things. So we are doing, started with a couple of newsletters. So if you're on our subscriber list, you would have seen the last 2 newsletters. We talked about the science behind ketones and then kind of what we're up to here. And so then now we're doing this podcast, and we want to get into some of the details about this experiment, and we'll start with the background and the science behind it, and then we'll go from there. We'll let you know what kind of the ultimate outcome of this is going to be. So, Chris, do you want to talk about, now you wrote an article about kind of the background of ketones, what they are, and why should we be concerned about them, and how it relates to like the ketogenic diet and things like that?
Sure. So ketones, it's a very hot word right now, especially with ketosis. You hear a bunch of bodybuilders and, the Instagram fitness models saying, they're going to do 30 days of keto. And essentially what a ketone is, it's naturally produced by the body. And there are 2 ways for your body to start producing ketones. One is starving yourself and doing, I think it's 3 to 7 days of just not eating. So if you did not eat for 3 to 7 days, your fuel stores, your natural fuel stores in the body, especially carbs, would be completely depleted, and your body would say, I need fuel. So what it starts to do is the liver starts to produce ketones and ketone bodies. And that fuels your body. So it's a type of fuel source that your body produces, either by starving, which is the first way, or part 2 is doing a very low carb diet. So we're talking under 50 grams total of carbohydrates per day, not net carbs, but 50 grams total. And if you do that for, 2 to 3 weeks, I think is the typical, average timeline. Obviously, some people slip in ketosis a lot faster than others, but 2 to 3 weeks is the average of what that low carb diet takes for your body to say, I can't burn any sugar. I don't have any more sugar to burn. I need to switch to ketones. So it starts generating ketones. And ketones, unlike fat stores, so when your body can break down fats and lipids and use it for energy, unlike those, ketones can actually be used by the brain. So naturally, the brain prefers glucose or sugar as a fuel source. It does very well when you have lots of sugar and you're able to have, maintain your focus, and you feel good when your brain's running on sugar. On fats, you're a little bit more, when your brain's trying to run on fats, it's a little bit more lethargic. It's hard. Like you sometimes you get that kind of what they call as a keto haze, where you kind of have that mental brain fog. But with ketones, you get that sense of focus, and the keto buzz is how some people describe it as, where you are like narrowed in and focused, and your brain can actually use ketones.
Yeah, I have a question on that. So that would be coming from, generally when you say that, like the keto fog, or the, kind of having a little bit foggier of a brain, that'd be coming from more of a higher carb diet, right? I mean, that's not, because I've been eating low carb for, I don't know, decades or something. But, and so like when I kind of have experimented with the keto diet, I've never experienced that like level of fog, but I imagine that's because I'm so used to running,
Right.
not on carbs, right?
Right. So if you eat lots of carbs beforehand, so your body's very naturally adapted to using carbs as fuel, and then suddenly take those carbs away and it tries to and has to switch over to use fats, that's where that fog comes into play before you switch from that into generating ketones.
Right. Okay, cool.
Good question.
Yeah.
So how does this fit into training is that during training, we burn a ratio of fat to sugar. So when we're in a very aerobic state, when we're walking around, when we're doing very low intensity cycling or elliptical, we're burning a higher ratio of fat to sugar. And as you start to go from aerobic to anaerobic and increase that intensity, we start to burn a higher ratio of sugar. So once you get to a certain point, you're burning nothing but sugar. And, our body, burns sugar very well. And the benefits of sugar over burning fats is because you're able to continue to burn sugar with less oxygen. You can be in a higher aerobic state and continue to burn sugar versus fats, where you definitely need to be aerobic to be able to continue to process them as a primary fuel source. So at higher intensities, regardless of how fat adapted you are, you're going to be burning sugar. Mm-hmm. With low carb diets, if you train and eat on a low carb diet, that ratio where you start to burn a higher ratio of sugar, it gets pushed up and up and up, but it never fully reaches threshold. It never really reaches those really hard intensities when you're burning fat. So, you can go on a low carb diet. You can go into ketosis, and that place, it's the turnover point where you start to burn more sugar versus fat, gets pushed up. So you're able to hold higher intensities while still burning fat rather than sugar. And you're, saving your carbohydrates for later, but it never fully gets up to the point where you're able to burn fats during high intensity sprints and be able to hold it for long periods of time.
Yeah. And that's kind of like the aerobic versus anaerobic that we've kind of known about for a while, like that you're sort of in this aerobic zone and burning fat. And then when you go to the anaerobic zone, which is what you're talking about, then you're instantly burning carbs or sugar instead of fat. And
the benefits of being fat adapted is that you're sparing glycogen.
Yeah.
So that if you're doing these long epic rides or an Ironman race where you're going to be out there for 10, 12, 14, 16 hours, then you have to be more aerobic, and therefore, you should be sparing glycogen so you don't have to take in as much glycogen. Right. Because if you try to replenish all the carbs that you need to, you're going to run into GI distress. And that's what people say are one of the benefits of going low carb and kind of trying to be more fat adapted is that you don't have to take in as much food and as much sugar, and therefore run the risk of being, running into GI distress from too much sugar.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, and one disclaimer: we are strictly talking about performance here. We're not talking about the health benefits.
Right. Yeah.
The health benefits of keto, and if you were not a triathlete, if you were not a swimmer, if you did not do endurance exercise or were training for races, and you strictly focused on your health, that's a completely different podcast.
Right.
So I think it's good to be clear here that we're talking about we're emphasizing performance here rather than health.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. Good point. Because like the average person and even the average person doing triathlons, some of this is going to be a little bit probably overkill, would you say?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say so. Like if you're an average person going out because you're enjoying it, you enjoy the camaraderie of races, you want to do personal bests, but at the same time, you're not gunning for the podium.
Yeah.
Then I think the point of this experiment is more the people who want to compete, who want to kind of push the limits of their own performance and push out their fatigue levels during races. I think this is more geared towards them.
Yeah. Okay, great. So then, so we kind of have the background of ketones now. There's the idea of doing it naturally, which is like you said, like fasting or just going super low carb for a few weeks. So now we have the exogenous ketones or ones that you take. Can you talk about that a little bit?
So if you do both the starvation or the low carb diet for quite some time, the fat adaptation, you're still going to lose some performance benefits. You're not going to be able to do VO2 max repeats. You're not going to be able to hold high levels of your threshold power for longer periods of time, because at those levels, you're still going to be burning sugar. So your performance and your training will take a hit by doing both of those routes, whether starvation or low carb diet, to get into ketosis. And even then, when you get into ketosis, if you have a gel while on the bike, you might get out of ketosis. Mm-hmm. So the issue is, can you benefit from ketones and burning ketones and have be able to fuel your brain and body with ketones, but at the same time, not jeopardize your carbohydrate stores? Mm-hmm. And therefore, if you don't jeopardize your carbohydrate stores or have to reduce your training levels to get into ketosis, if you could have the best of both worlds by taking exogenous ketones to get you into a state of ketosis, and at the same time be able to consume carbs without getting out of ketosis, then theoretically you could most likely push a higher wattage without any and still burn ketones. Mm-hmm. So spare glycogen, but at the same time, burn glycogen.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Great.
So that's kind of the premise of this experiment is that possible? I tested this out. I tested HVMN ketones back in August, and I did kind of an Ironman simulation where I was going at lower intensities, where it would make sense. Ketones would be a great benefit there because you're not going at a higher intensity, so you're burning ketones, sparing the glycogen. Yeah. This time around, I wanted to experiment with, can I push higher intensities for longer periods of time while still burning a good mixture of ketones and carbs? So right. Instead of going at 75 to 80% of FTP, would I be able to do something like 90 to 95% of FTP?
Right. Okay, cool. And so this experiment, so we set it up with HVMN supplement ketones. And so can you describe like what we set out to do? And then we can talk a little bit about like what happened. And then we can talk about like, what the results were.
Sure. So HVMN, after they contacted us, they shipped me out all the way up to Canada, a package of 3, which is typical for kind of what they typically ship out is a package of 3. And in that package, you get 3 bottles of, I don't know exactly how much of it, but my wife describes it as, if you think of the old cologne bottles, it's pretty much kind of like that amount, and it's kind of the same shape of that bottle. When I got them, she mistakenly thought that I was getting cologne, but there's 3 mini bottles. I think it's 120 milliliters, but it's 3 mini bottles of 120 calories. And after I wrestled it out of customs and finally got it into the country, I was set them up, and what I wanted to test was whether if I took them before a high intensity workout, would I be able to hold higher intensities for longer without bonking? So without completely cracking. And in that, be able to see, all right, if I am able to go long periods of time without cracking, that means that I'm have high ketone levels in my blood, which means I'm most likely sparing glycogen, which means I can still go at higher intensities for longer periods of time.
Okay, great.
So that was my idea going into the study. So I set it up so that I would do 4 hours of high intensity. And when I say high intensity, I'm not going all out because I know that no matter what I take, I'm still not going to be able to do, an hour at 120%. Then if I did that, then that would just be superhuman and most likely my numbers and baseline would be off.
Right.
I knew that for a fact going in, but what I didn't know is, right around threshold. So we're thinking, 90 to just above 100% of my functional threshold power on the bike. That's still pretty glycolytic. Meaning I'm burning a lot of sugar in that zone. So how long can I hold my pace in that zone? And because we're a triathlon company, I decided to make it a brick and alternated between the Vastus swim ergometer and doing threshold and holding just under threshold on the Vastus swim ergometer with bike intervals, and did that for so 15 minutes on the Vastus swim ergometer, 45 minutes of cycling, and then alternated between those two for 4 hours.
Now, okay, so you took the ketones before you did this.
So they recommend 30 minutes before your key workout, take some ketones, and they recommend having it with breakfast or some like your typical breakfast. And this time around, I didn't do that. I took it with a granola bar and just the ketones 30 minutes before. And the reason why I did that is because I read in some of the research that is out there that your blood, if you have it with food, then it will impede absorption of the ketones. So it's better to have it on a slightly empty stomach, not a completely empty, because apparently that can lead to GI distress, but just with a little bit of food, but not a lot. So 30 minutes before, I had my typical amount of coffee, I took the ketones, and I had a granola bar.
Okay, cool. So then you got on the swim bench.
Yep, got on the swim ergometer and knocked out a 1,000-meter TT. And in that, I tried to hold a steady power, about 90% of my calculated critical power on the ergometer. And then every 200 meters, I threw in a 50-meter surge, like a sprint, just to make things interesting and also to burn more glycogen.
Yeah, okay.
And then from there, hopped off the bench, went straight to the bike, and hopped on the bike and did a workout on Trainer Road called Deerhorn -4, which is 2 rounds of 4x4 minutes where you bounce between, I think it's 92% of your functional threshold power and 113% of your functional threshold power. So if you're a Trainer Road user, you can look it up. It's called Deerhorn -4, and you can see that it's called a crossover workout because you're right under threshold and then you're right above threshold, and you bounce between those. And did that for 45 minutes and then hopped back onto the swim bench, did another 1,000-meter TT, back to Deerhorn -4, back to the swim bench, back to Deerhorn -4, back to the swim bench, and then finally the final Deerhorn -4. And throughout this, I was also fueling with granola bars. So we're putting together a video and you'll see what specific granola bars I'm using. But I like using those because A, they're cheap. B, they're very portion controlled. They're only about 100 calories a piece, which is good. And they only have about 5 grams of sugar. So I can take one, I can structure it more without having to chop up like a Cliff Bar or something. And I also wanted to use that because it's the prototypical thing triathletes use. Triathletes typically use, Cliff Bars or Cliff Z bars or power bars on the bike. I wanted to use something that anyone could get. They could go to the grocery store. It's cheap. Just get it and be able to portion it out over the hour. And also I hydrated with amino acids because apparently there's a relationship between if you take protein, the ketones help you from what I've read, the ketones help with protein. So if you have amino acids in your blood, then it helps with the synthesis of those proteins, which makes you feel, it keeps you focused throughout long workouts. So I had a amino acid beverage that I sipped along throughout all the workouts.
And that's like a powder that you mix with water, or?
Yeah, it's think of it like the typical bro powder that you see everyone using at the gym. It's the exact same thing. It's like meant for bodybuilders, but it's just a hydration amino acid blend. So it's got amino acids in there. It's got electrolytes in there. And while it's intended for bodybuilders, for me, it works perfectly for cycling workouts. Yeah. And it's, it's something you can pick up at any pharmacy or order off Amazon. It's like, it's nothing special.
Right. Cool. Okay. So, and then, just a side question. Did you have like music playing, or, 4 hours is kind of a long time?
That would be mental torture if I did this without music. I had YouTube blaring, and then I did switch from YouTube videos to music towards the end when I really started to fade. Yeah. It was actually interesting. There's a cyclist I follow on YouTube called Cam Nichols. He's from Australia, and he published the morning I did the experiment, he published a video testing out the workouts, and he did 5 by 5 minute intervals on his bike up a hill in Australia. Mm-hmm. And I looked at the video, I'm like, 5 by 5 minutes, he's mostly going at a big clip, but that's only an hour workout. I think I can do him one better. So I had that in the back of my mind. I had to show him what a good workout was with this.
Yeah, totally. So now let's get into like, how did you feel like kind of towards the beginning, and then in the middle, and then at the end?
So in the beginning workouts, the first 1,000-meter TT on the Vasa, and then also the first workout, I actually felt pretty, I wouldn't say bad, but I felt like my exertion was higher than it is typical. And I think that might be because I wasn't fully warmed up yet. Because on the second round and the third round, I felt great. Like my heart rate was down. I felt, powerful. Like I wasn't fatiguing. The focus was on, and the time really just started to fly by. Mm-hmm. But that first round was more difficult than I was expecting. Mm-hmm. And making it easier in the second and third round, I might have known what was coming. I most likely knew what to expect, but also I just felt better in those second and third rounds than I did in the first. So it took me a little while to warm up, I think. And energy wise though, and power wise, very, very steady. Mm-hmm. I was able to hit all my intervals on both the erg and on trainer road. So both power wise, very steady, heart rate wise, very steady. But that first round, just my rate of perceived exertion was just slightly higher than I'm used to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting.
And then things started to fall apart. So in that fourth, you'll see in the video, in that fourth round, I started to fade a little bit. And I started to, middle of the second round, actually, after the second round, so halfway through the workout, I took another ketone bottle. So my second ketone bottle, and then also had another granola bar and a half, mm-hmm. which I think was 150 calories total. So and not too much, not that much. And I didn't really feel like I needed it because I didn't feel hungry, but I did feel like most likely it was a good idea just to top up the stores if I did need something in the next 2 hours. Mm-hmm. But in that fourth round, I really started to fade, and like on the erg, I felt fine, and then hit the bike. And, it was one of the first times that my legs were telling me, we can't do any more of this. And my brain's like, yeah, let's go. Yeah. So it was typically it's the reverse, mm-hmm. where my legs say, oh, I can go. And my brain says, no, I'm not into that today. It was the opposite. So it was weird to have that feeling, because frustrating almost, because my brain was like, all right. Yeah. But my legs were just saying, nope, we're checking out right now. Yeah. No more. And so you'll have to see the exact ending of how that workout ended. But it was that last block of cycling was a struggle.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Interesting. So I think what we'll do is we'll link to the video. We're going to have 2 videos. So hopefully we'll probably have both of them up by the time this podcast comes out. But either way, we'll have links to whatever videos we have. And the listener, I'm speaking to the listener, you can watch that and see kind of more the results, the actual results of this than just, hearing this. But I think it's interesting that you had this, it's sort of like I think of like a bell curve where it's like you start out with like kind of really low and then you're up and then you're really doing well. And then you're sort of like at the end, sort of like, not much left.
Mm-hmm. And I think it says something about, I think ketones and using ketones because your body gives out before your mind.
Mm-hmm.
I think that definitely tells you something about, the fueling source that you use
Mm-hmm.
and how much of an influence, regardless of what fueling source you use, if you get to that feeling, it gives credit to the nutritional choices you made.
Yeah. And would you consider like, what are your thoughts on doing something like this? I'm not suggesting that you need to do it again, like anytime soon, but like doing that type of thing. But instead of having like the higher carb snack, have like, I don't know, something like just coconut oil or something that's like super just high in fat.
I don't because the body doesn't really work like that.
Yeah.
It's not because to burn fat, like when we say we're burning fat when we're doing a workout, it's mostly the fat that we already have stored.
Right.
So if you try to do an extended high intensity, because I think anyone, because of how much sugar we have in our body, we have I think 2,000 calories worth of sugar in our body. You could most likely do intensity on a low carb diet. You could most likely do intensity for 30, 45 minutes and feel relatively okay just because of the stores in your body.
Mm-hmm.
It may not be reproducible, but you could do it. But when you get to extended glycogen workouts and you try to take fat as a fuel, I think it would be like putting diesel in your car, and your car doesn't typically take diesel.
Mm-hmm.
Or trying to put diesel in a Prius.
Yeah.
The car was like, I don't think I can function. I can't do what you want me to do with the fuel you just gave me. So I don't think it would be, even if I was in a low carb state,
mm-hmm.
even taking fats to replace the calories I'm burning, because it's a different energy system, I don't think it would work.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
What would be interesting would be to redo something like this without the ketones and see how I fare.
Yeah.
That I think would be the kind of, because I don't think it's hard to do given the unique taste of the ketone esters,
mm-hmm.
Because I'm just going to straight out say they taste nasty. It's a mixture of like gin and rubbing alcohol.
Ooh, yeah.
That's the best way I could describe it.
I had that for breakfast, so I'm used to that.
So that's I think the major draw. It's hard to reproduce that in a placebo.
Yeah.
So it would be hard to do this as like a double-blind control study. They have done that in the lab, but trying to reproduce that here in my house would be pretty difficult.
Yeah.
And if I tried to mix rubbing alcohol and gin to get the same flavor, I think it would affect my training in other ways.
Yeah, you might drop dead.
Yeah.
Oh.
Just get a little tipsy on the bike.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, obviously, this is an experiment, an N=1 experiment. It's not meant to be a clinical trial. It's not meant to be, proof that it works.
Right.
Although I did take my ketone levels throughout all 4 hours. And I think watching the video just to see what my ketones do over the course of that, I think it would be worth watching it because my ketone levels do something very interesting throughout the course of the workout.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this is meant not as a clinical trial saying this works. This is absolute proof that, you can, have ketones and burn carbs. It's not about that. It's more, this is my experience. This is how I used it. It worked for me. It could work for you as well.
Yeah.
And verifying that. And before people get up and, get their pitchforks out and say, oh, it's just another supplement that does nothing for your body. I disagree with that statement. It does do something.
Yeah.
Because if you look at my previous blog post, if you look at everyone who's taken ketones, if you look at the video, you will see that when they take the ketone esters, their blood ketone levels do rise significantly and put them in a ketogenic state. Mm-hmm. So we know scientifically that it does something for you.
Right.
It changes something in your body. Your body would not be able to do that with a placebo or sawdust, pills or whatever, pills that you take. So it does do something for your body. Whether that translates to performance is what we wanted to test.
Yeah.
And I think we did that pretty well. At least, as I said, N=1. This is not a clinical trial. This is not a double blind because, placebos, we tried to make it as scientific as possible, but we can't do, there's still gaps in our scientific process here.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Now, so talking about the way you felt like with your legs not being able to perform, I got a couple of questions there. So first, what do you think that you could do to extend your performance there so you don't have that like feeling of like, okay, my legs are done? And then secondly, how much of this has to do with like the condition that you are already in?
I think both are related to the condition that I'm already in. I think whether you can hold it for 4 hours or 5 hours or 6 hours is highly dependent on your intensity or how fit you are right now.
Yeah.
So I think if I wanted to push that out, it would be a matter of training more. If you get your fuel, the fact that you're narrowed everything down to just making it a matter of fitness and how much you've trained and your fitness level going into it and minimizing the nutrition, I think that's, if nutrition's out of the question as far as performance breakers and you're just able to say, it was my fitness level, it was my muscular strength, that's something there.
Yeah.
That's a good comment on where you are and you can measure, you're controlling what you control, which is nutrition. Now you can focus on the other things to maximize your performance. So I think, if you took the average Joe off the street, would they be able to do 4 hours on the trainer and do this workout? Possibly not, but they would be able to maximize the potential of their fitness that they have.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, cool. Well, I think we've kind of given a lot of detail. That was awesome to hear your whole story and all that you went through. Now, do you want to kind of wrap this up? Like, just give your somewhat a summary. I mean, obviously, the video is going to have a lot more details, and we'll have that in the show notes. But kind of just a wrap up would be great.
Sure. I guess my key points is that, taking the ketone ester has definitely boosted the ketones in my blood. In my opinion, it made me be able to push my body to the limits where my body failed rather than my nutrition failed or my mind failed. Another key takeaway is because if you go online, you will see that the ketones are very expensive. It's $100 for a set of 3 bottles. You don't need to, and I think this experiment also proves to me that you don't need to take it every single key workout, that if you are looking for pushing your limits in your key race, that you only need to take it most likely twice. Once during a key workout leading up to the race, so you can fine tune when you're going to take it, and then at the race itself. So if you're looking over the course of the season and you have one key Ironman or half Ironman or Olympic race, that means you only need to get 2 boxes for the whole entire year.
Right.
It's not something I would not unless you're, a Silicon Valley CEO who's bringing in lots of money. You don't need to buy this for every single weekend workout. So I think that's another key takeaway is to really fine tune the ability for this to work.
Right.
Take it once to figure out when you need to take it, because you figure out when you're going to take it, because sometimes, for different people, you might feel like it's burning off or your ketones begin to drop 2 hours in. For some, it might be 1 hour in. For some, it might be 3 hours in. So you need to figure out when your ketones begin to drop. Figure that out in your key workout, then take it during the key race. So it's not an everyday or every workout type fueling plan.
Yeah, that could add up.
So I think those are like my 3 key takeaways is that A, it definitely boosts ketones. B, it allows you to push, or allowed me to push my body to where I think I am physically capable of. And C, it's not an every workout occurrence. It's a once before a key race and a key race type of fueling strategy.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's just like everything else that we always talk about, and most coaches talk about, is like, don't do anything new on race day. So if you were to go into your race and be like, oh, I'm going to experiment with these ketones. I mean, you could do that if it was like just something you didn't really care about. But if you're trying to, you really want to do your PR or you want a podium or something, and you're doing something like this, that would be crazy.
And I also think, it's not only for the people doing that, who want to push themselves and gun for the podium. I also think it would work for people who have a very sensitive stomach because they don't have to consume as many calories as they typically would do throughout a race.
Right.
You will see in the video that I actually had a significantly reduced amount of calorie intake throughout the 4 hours, despite the higher intensity, despite the caloric load, but didn't feel like I needed to fuel as much.
Yeah.
So if you have a sensitive stomach and you don't want to run the risk of GI distress with so many gels and so many granola bars or so many Clif bars, then using exogenous ketones would help you be able to decrease your caloric intake without jeopardizing performance.
Yeah, and that's key. That's huge, especially like for me, I'm like mostly low carb. And so when I do some kind of training or whatever, I don't want anything like that. Like if I had a Clif bar, like when I was training, it would just destroy me, So something like ketone supplements, it would help me and I wouldn't have the GI distress. Like it would, and it would help me in the same way that like something like a gel or, something like that would.
Yeah. Oh, and one last point that I definitely want to bring up is you might see on, Amazon or vitaminshoppe.com or whatever supplement store of your choice, you might see raspberry ketones or ketone salts, like in a powdered form. They are not the same as the ketone esters. Those raspberry ketones and ketone salts they're not backed as like the ketone esters are.
Yeah.
The ketone esters actually in the lab, not my experiment, not my N=1.
Right.
If you read the literature, if you go beyond PubMed and actually look at, I think it's cellular metabolism. I think that's the journal article that I found it on. It's actually linked to one of the blogs, but they found that, ketone salts, the type of powder that you get, doesn't work and is not absorbed by the body like ketone esters. And raspberry ketones, I don't know if they do anything for you besides waste your money. So these are very different from those two other products.
Yeah, that's a good point. And what I'll do is I'll link to the blog posts. Like we have this series of blog posts. I'll have links to those and the link to HVMN, we're doing this experiment with that sell the ketone esters, and then the videos. So pay attention, like just go to TriSwimCoach.com/blog and then you'll see this, or you can search for TriSwimCoach altogether, HVMN, and you'll see it there too. So yeah, I think that's good. I mean, this has been really interesting, Chris, and I think that our listeners will get a lot out of this show. Do you want to add anything else before we sign off here?
I think that's it. If you have any questions, you know where to find us. Please keep you don't know anything about fat adaptation, or, you're selling snake oil emails. If you could be a little bit more specific in your criticism, send us an email. But, we know that this is an N=1 experiment, but I think you will be surprised if you read through the blogs, if you look through the videos and look at the literature and the scientific literature that we've provided, that I think you'll have a little bit different approach and a little bit, hopefully it will, show you the science, the actual science, not the pseudoscience, the actual science behind the product.
Right. And if anyone out there that's listening to this has followed TriSwimCoach over the years, we really don't do many partnerships and we don't really promote much. Actually, I don't even really talk about our TriSwim Success program very often on the podcast, but this is something that I really liked this. The reason I gravitated towards doing this is that it's an experiment. Like that's all we're doing. It's an experiment. Now, you can decide, like you watch the video, you go, oh yeah, that looks awesome, I want it. Then you can decide to buy it. But I didn't want to like do anything where we're just like, hey, buy this supplement and that kind of thing, because I think there's so many people out there that do that. And I don't want to be part of that, that kind of a thing where it's like profit over the actual facts. Because I've seen that so many times where it's like, oh, you're selling the supplement, but actually it's never been proven to do anything. And it's just a big waste of money.
And that's, I think, one thing about this experiment that I've loved and loved partnering with HVMN is that we're actually able to provide you with facts. Yeah. Like in the video, I actually show you my blood work. I actually show you the workout. I actually show you the watts that I'm doing throughout the workout, and my performance throughout the workout, so that you can actually see these are the facts and this is how the product is affecting me.
Yeah.
So this is, I think a product that I would definitely stand behind just based off my own experience this past weekend and the literal facts, the results, the numbers that I got.
Yeah, cool, man. This is awesome. So I'm going to wrap it up here. I'm going to make this easy because we have so many show notes in this one. A lot of times we just have a couple links. This time we have a lot. So we'll make the URL TriSwimCoach.com/132. So just go to that, and then that will bring you to this exact podcast, and you can check everything else out. So yeah, thanks, Chris, for doing all this and for sharing all that information. I think it's awesome. And good luck with your winter up there.
Thank you. All right, I'll talk to you later, guys.
All right, thanks everyone for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for listening to another episode of the TriSwimCoach podcast. If you like this show, consider giving us a 5-star review on iTunes, and we'll read it off on the next show. And to get the latest triathlon swimming tips, tricks, blogs, and podcasts, go to TriSwimCoach.com. See you next time. Until then, befriend the water.